Hey everyone, Seth here, and I am so incredibly excited to be back on the Mindmill Podcast. It feels so good to be healthy again, reunited with my friends and family, and to be back on the mic to share my first podcast episode in over a year. For those of you who aren't aware, in August 2019, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's amazing how quickly life gets turned upside down. On a Saturday, I hosted a pool party. On Sunday, I went out to dinner to celebrate a birthday. And on Monday, I went to the hospital with stomach pains. By the end of that week, I had been diagnosed, and my mom had flown out to take care of me in the hospital. Thus started a journey of tests, scans, scopes, meds, infusions, fear, pain, depression, loneliness, slow recovery, and eventually a connection to loved ones and an appreciation for life that I never knew was possible. There's much I could say about my journey with cancer. So many incredible gestures by loved ones, so many medical professionals who I owe my life to, so many moments of despair as well as beauty and joy. I will never be able to verbalize it all. Just know that my heart is full of gratitude for all of you who donated, prayed, sent gifts, visited, called, wrote songs, and supported me and my family through this chapter. Since my return home from the Mayo Clinic in March, I've been continuing medical treatments, rebuilding my body, and readjusting to, quote, normal life, whatever the hell that is. I've also been spending a lot of time in nature and in music, which brings me into introducing this podcast. My good friend and former Mindmill guest, Yoshua Greenfield, now known as Yoshua, has been a pillar of support for me through my sickness. He has also been through a massively transitional year himself. We got together outside of Boulder, Colorado for a barefoot hike and a nature-inspired conversation. I wanted my return to the Mindmill to be an open dialogue with a close friend. In this episode, we discuss each other's journeys, how we are both adapting to this COVID lifestyle, finding yourself through nature, and the future of both the Mindmill and Yoshua's movement, You Enjoy Life. I encourage you to go back and listen to Yoshua's previous Mindmill episode, but for now, I hope you enjoy the return of the Mindmill podcast. Is that good?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I started rolling, but it's just to kind of get into the feel of it.
Yeah.
It's always funny when we've been talking for, an hour and a half straight, and then you're like, oh, no, we got to, make it official, right?
Super official.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know that you've told me you don't care what I call you, but what would you?
Yoshua is cool.
Yoshua?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that one.
I like it, too. I like it, and I'm working my, I'm trying to reconstruct my knowledge or my learning to be because you've been Josh or Joshua for as long as I've known you, but I always want to respect if people want to change that, But
yeah, thank you.
So we'll talk a little bit about, I guess we'll just keep it loose, and we'll talk about just this last year and where we're heading. I like the idea of how we're both approaching, move this kind of post-COVID lifestyle and how we can jump forward.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad it's post-COVID already. Even though COVID's still here, we're
post-COVID shock, right? You know what I mean? That's what we're getting at.
Yeah. I like it. This is a big deal for you. This is the first one. When's the last time you recorded?
Probably, maybe July of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it feels almost like some kind of anniversary, September, like this time. We both have gone through a lot of changes since exactly a year ago.
So much.
Yeah.
So much. I'm a little bit over a year since getting sick, but now that we're kind of at that year mark, it's like these dates. I'm like, oh, well, at this time in September when we're recording this, this time a year ago is when I was, really, really bad. Right?
When did you first get diagnosed?
August 26th.
Well, yeah.
August 26th was the day that I guess that was, I think it was maybe August 31st that I got diagnosed, but it was August 26th that I went in and was sick. That was when it happened. It was about a week after the Arise Festival and a week before Fish and Labor Day. Yeah.
I remember running into Adam at the show and asking where you were. Yeah. Wow.
That's not the greatest news and small talk to be on Fish Lot talking about your buddy being deathly ill. But here we are. So I know we already just dove right into it, but I'm here with Yoshua Greenfield. We're up here on the sacred cliffs of the Green Mountain outside of Boulder, Colorado. We went for a barefoot hike, which has been interesting
Yeah.
and very rewarding, but also a little challenging. And we found a great little overlook, a nice quiet spot to chill out and have a little conversation, a little celebration of life and coming back to the podcast. And I'm honored to have you with me, man.
It's great to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, celebration. I mean, you were cancer-free as of when?
It's kind of hard to put an exact number on it, but I took a test in the end of February before I left the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, Minnesota, and there was no signs. And then I got another test mid-July after I had finished all of my chemo, and it continued to be no signs. So I'm just here, man, you know,
How you
cautiously
feel?
optimistic, you know.
Yeah. How does it feel? Just in general.
It feels amazing. I didn't think, even when it was at its darkest point, I was never afraid of dying. The hardest part of the whole experience was this, 2 to 3 month, maybe, it kind of was a slow process of just feeling like I was in utter decay and that I had lost my body and my strength, and I was isolated, and the weather had turned. I was in the tundra of Minnesota, and my mind started suffering too. That was the hardest part of everything. And so to come back, to start rebuilding my body, and now getting into, barefoot lifestyle, and it's just a beautiful time to slow down and to really think about what's most important and try new things that, seemed weird or freakish, pre-COVID, or, just something that when we lived in fear.
Wow. I'm really curious about, just to kind of dive right in, I'm sure you had lots of different conversations with all sorts of elements about sickness and health and with cancer and treatment. Like, what do you see, like, if you were to sort of explain what you consider, like, cancer to be, beyond, like, a medical thing? I'm curious if you've had those,
Unfortunately, I've had a lot of time to think about that,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you asking. To me, cancer is just so diverse. It's, just the diagnosed cancers are everywhere. You can have it in your toe, you can have it in your lymph nodes, in your brain, in your lungs. It can show itself in so many different ways, and it's in a lot of ways, still very mysterious. But on a larger level, I mean, cancer can be, a mental cancer or a spiritual cancer. And I think that that's something that is not diagnosed as easily, and that a lot of people in our society deal with every day. And it's hard because they know they're not well, but they don't have the luxury of having a specific stamp of this is what you have. This is your ailment, It's just that we just feel like there's something missing. We're living in lack. We're not living in abundance, And that was something that I realized when I was really, really sick, is that's a choice, and it's not always an easy choice, but it's the most important choice, how you choose to spend your minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And damn, like, there was some really, really dark times when I was really sick, but coming back, it's just so much easier, I find now, to just be grateful and present with little things, like this nice breeze that's coming across us right now. That's like kind of cooling my back after having my backpack on this hike, like it takes a lot of practice to have the little moments of clarity and of appreciation. And, I was practicing that before I got sick, but now after getting through this crazy, crazy year, it's nice to kind of have that in my background in order to make me that much more appreciative for the current moment,
So it almost feels like not an easy route, but like a fast track to, like, full presence and appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Or at least a better stab at it, right?
Yeah.
What we're all kind of looking forward to. It's so difficult to put yourself in anyone else's shoes, right? I don't know what it's like to go through a terrible divorce or bank foreclosure or the loss of a child or something like that, and you can't help but try to be empathetic and really, really feel how that person's feeling. But having gone through cancer and seeing how it affected all of my friends, it and family, it feels like it's now my duty to, to almost laugh in its face in a way, not like I'm making fun of it or taking it lightly, because I know a lot of people have lost their lives or lost loved ones to cancer. But I think that it's important to celebrate and to be happy and find a sense of humor in things, even when we're in these crazy, crazy times, whether you're going through cancer or battling this COVID epidemic or losing your job, losing your home. It's important to still find the love and laughter in the smallest of things.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I ask, is that word cancer is such a heavy weighted word in our society. It's just like this sort of, it's been there for so long, and there's, like you said, there's so many different types of it. And when people get the diagnosis or they hear someone, it's like what we consider cancer to be. And I'm always curious about the energetics of these words and the energetics of like why we, attract or repel like certain things in our life. And to me, having never gone through cancer, but having enough people that have and knowing, it does seem like the common thread is like maybe there's some sort of lack or some sort of teaching, or there's something going on that's just beyond what maybe the medical term of it is, that's like playing into your whole life, that's like putting you on a certain path. So I think it's really awesome that you've like been able to develop that awareness of it, having gone through it, having overcome it, and now like understanding to a different level how important it is to appreciate life. Because there's different ways to go about that, right? And that's definitely one that's like maybe not that you chose it or signed up for it, but if you had to look at life, I kind of was joking to a friend recently, like, what are the different paths to like awakening, or to like presence? And for me, it was like this like 7-year intensive marriage. Like I chose like the 7-year marriage package or something. And it's like, it's really forced me to, having gone through a wild, marriage and divorce and having lost people in my life, both in death and also just in heartbreak, seeing the importance of like savoring every moment. That's definitely been like the number one thing. Like life is impermanent. I have no attachment to how long I need to be here or, anything like that. But I know like while I'm here and the people that are in my life, like to completely be present and savor those moments as much as possible. Because when you love something and then you lose it, like how valuable it is to really appreciate every moment. And it's made me sad a lot to see when someone who lost like their partner and maybe their relationship wasn't great, and then all of a sudden they lost their partner, and now it's like they sort of idolize them, or they talk about like all the things they wish they did or how great they were, and it's like, but they couldn't actually cultivate that while the person was living. And I never want to ever have a relationship like that.
Yeah. We've been hiking for an hour and a half, and and my cardinal rule with podcasting, as I mentioned earlier, is don't be careful not to spill all the beans before we start rolling. And so there were a few things that we were like, let's make sure we like cover that while we're on the mics. When we were walking up this hill, we were talking about how I still find, and I'm sure you do too, these moments of fear and tension when you're like, and a lot of it is fear of being exposed, fear of being vulnerable, fear of rejection. And that goes right into what you were saying about, in relationships, sometimes even with the closest people, you feel very afraid to be 100% genuine because it puts you in this very vulnerable place and you don't know what's going to happen on the other side of that. I can say firsthand that the vast majority of the time that I express myself and have the hard conversation or be 100% vulnerable, I feel so much better afterwards, regardless of the outcome, going for it. And I still have those fears. I still have those hiccups, those little, maybe I'll just sit this one out, maybe it'll work itself out sort of procrastination moments in my mind. And one thing that I've learned from the cancer is, like, man, I just survived this ridiculous illness, and so many people came to my support and came and visited and sent me prayers and everything. And I've been traveling the world and almost died in really dodgy areas of Morocco or the Amazon or whatever,
Yeah.
and psychedelic journeys where I thought I was gonna die, and yet still I'm like afraid to talk to the cute girl or or like have the difficult conversation with the friend, or whatever. So it's something that I just say a prayer to everybody who may be listening out to, is just, recognize that, putting yourself out there is infinitely better than living like a life of quiet desperation, where you just a life of FOMO, right? Where you wish you would have done something, right?
It's not worth it. And you always hear that on people, like, on my deathbed, I just don't have any regrets, And so I very much live my life. I have, up to this point, no regrets. And something that I've come to see is that you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to the universe. No matter how much we try to, like, manipulate things or tweak situations to like be smart about stuff or be calculated about how we're going to approach something, it's like we're only lying to ourselves. And you can't, like, what I mean to say is, like, if you're thinking that not sharing some sort of truth with somebody is like somehow like, oh, I'm just gonna wait for the right moment, or like, I need to figure out the right way to say it, like, the universe sees that and it responds in a certain way. So when we're fully honest and we're fully present, it's like we think we can hide these things, but like our whole world knows. We're so much bigger than just this little individual person. So when you're fully honest and you're fully present, like your life is reflected back in that way. And that's why, like, I asked this sort of question about cancer or sickness and different things, is because I see there's like life on the physical manifestation. Like, we're on this plane here together, and there are tests we can do, and there are things we can know and see. And then there's this whole energetic reality, like this sort of quantum world that, like, we're coming from, that's like manifesting this world. So things might seem really solid in this reality, but in truth, they're very fluid. So if we keep holding on to these ideas, or if we keep staying small or stuck or scared, well, then we keep reflecting that and attracting that. And one thing you were saying on the walk today is, like, yeah, if you're not sharing these things with people, like if you're going to a party and you're meeting someone that you think is cute, but you're staying on the surface, well, and they're staying on the surface, well, you're both going to completely miss each other. And if you present yourself fully and they don't vibrate with that, then it's like an instant knowing as well. So there's this cool, like, the BS detector. Like, if you're just fully yourself and you're fully expressed in that, the people that are going to be attracted to that are going to be the ones that you're going to want to spend time with. And I hear this a lot, where people are so afraid to be who they are, but it's like there's literally no point in not, because if you're not who you are, then you're attracting people who are not resonating with the real you anyway. So even if it's just one person, even if you scare all your friends away, well, then they probably weren't really your friends.
Yeah, and it leaves you open for new experiences, meeting a new tribe that you do completely vibrate with. I mean, good Lord, man. I mean, of all of my friends I've met on my path, like, when I meet up with you, like, our conversations are just so stimulating, because it's just the adventures that we both kind of go down, whether it's, a new travel, a new relationship, a new project. I just really enjoy our shared paths, and how we respect how the chances or the choices that we're making right now. It just always seems so stimulating and mutually respected. And so that's what I make sure to make good time to see you. So I want to take. We can always go back, and the whole purpose of this conversation is to keep it fluid and just kind of be like we're getting back into the podcasting realm. But I wanted to turn the tables around and talk about some of the things that you've been up to, mainly in the last year, but I guess on a more specific level, or I guess we're talking like kind of post-COVID shock. We're not through COVID as we're recording this, but we are through the point of what the hell is going on, and now we're in the more adjusting our lifestyle and how to live an abundant and thriving life while in this time of confusion and for a lot of people, a lot of darkness.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because I've I got to Boulder in March, like March 1st. I think my divorce was finalized March 2nd. Like I was living in California, just kind of working on some stuff and finishing up my book. And, my friend got this house and I came back, and I remember my birthday's March 13th, and we had this like dinner planned for a couple friends and I that had similar birthdays, and it was canceled. And that was like the first thing that was canceled. And it was like, what is going on? And like I said, all the confusion. And I just remember feeling really, like, it felt like very affirming. Like all the things I had been doing all these years, and granted, like at the beginning of COVID, no one knew what was going on, but it felt like all the things I had been training my mind to be comfortable in any situation and to overcome fear, training my body to overcome physical sickness, all these things that I didn't understand why I was like so passionate about over the years to learn and grow, suddenly like made sense. And it wasn't just COVID, it was like this idea of life is unpredictable. I said life is impermanent. We have no idea what's going to come, but we can learn to flow through things. So to me, it's less about like trying to control the external, but recognizing that anything is possible in this world. Like, if maybe aliens could come attack, whatever the crazy thing that you might think is possible, yes, it could be possible, but how can we flow through it, and how can we stay empowered in that situation? So I actually felt like really good. It was very life affirming to me, and it also felt like this kick start. I had this vision. I was running with my dog in the woods, and it was probably in April, and I just saw this flash of myself like as an older man, gray beard, but I saw that I was like the healthiest, strongest, and fittest I've ever been in my entire life. Like I felt like I was like a woodsman. Like I could survive out in the woods, like, and fight bears and whatever crazy thing that I was fantasizing about. But what it really represented to me was like, this is just the beginning. This is just a reminder, like whatever happened right now is a small piece of what is possible that could happen in your life. Like COVID's like a little thing compared to what is, people talk, I don't mean to be doomsday. I'm not a doomsday person, but because anything could happen, all I can do is prepare myself to be like fully self-sustaining, fully healthy, not have to rely on other things. So it just felt like this kickstart to the next level, which is why now I'm starting to move and go off grid and live very simply with no water and just basic amenities and not wear shoes, and just all these things that don't serve me anymore are starting to strip away. And I feel like I've spent many years with like the ego and pulling away like all these layers of falseness within myself, and now it feels like physically I'm letting go of all these like material things that I thought I needed to survive, and I'm realizing that they don't serve me any purpose.
Yeah, it's wild. It's awesome. And it's something that you learn in a time of lack or in a time of total upheaval, which is where we're at right now. I'd say that we're a bit it's a lot easier than we think than it could be, right? And I think that it may get harder before it gets better, but it's also a chance for us to be proactive and to start thinking about what is it that's most important for us, and it truly comes down to, your health and your personal security. And outside of that, if you've got the ability to stand on your own 2 feet and to feed yourself when you actually need the food or when you actually need the water and shelter, then, everything else is just kind of a perk. And sometimes those perks can start to, turn the tables on you, start to weigh you down, it's like carrying too much in your pack, right?
Well, you see people that have all the money in the world and they get cancer, they get some sort of health thing, and they don't survive. And like they could have all the amenities, they could have all the top doctors, but it's really not about that, And then there are other people that just have nothing and they heal themselves naturally with the plants and doing ceremony, whatever the things are. It's like there's no constant. And they say the only constant is change. Like there's nothing that we can hold on to, but we can train ourselves. And I've been thinking it more in this like superhuman terms. And I don't mean like being Superman, and shooting lasers out of our eyes, but like being beyond the normal human that we were told that we could be. Mm-hmm. And we live in this world of comfort and convenience, and they actually don't do anything. All they do is get you to stay in that cycle. It's like, oh, well, this new technology came out, and this thing is going to make my life easier because, this is the faster, sexier version of the other thing that I used to have, my phone, my computer, whatever. But it's just like none of those things are really like leading us anywhere, and you can use anything for good or bad. But at the end of the day, like, a lot that's really been on my mind is like stripping away, rather than trying to get the things that we want, strip away all the things that are holding us back from like our life just going in the direction that it's trying to go in. You know, the mind like thinks it's like, I just want this and I'm forcing and I need to grab onto it. It's like, but the universe is already pushing you towards your destiny and pushing you towards the way that you need to go. And what's holding you back is these fears that are making you think that you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
You know, so just let them go.
Yeah. Fear of doing the work in a lot of ways, you know, and that's what we live in, is a life of convenience, right? You know, fast foods, quick coffees, you know, faster internet, better phones, like you said, you know, but there's something that you just can't get it. You have to earn it.
Yeah, and it's perpetuated on these ideas. Like, I've had this a lot, especially with the cooking show stuff and teaching people how to cook their own food. A lot of the barriers were like, okay, why don't you cook? Oh, well, you know, I work really hard. I don't have time. It's faster to go to McDonald's after work. It's actually cheaper to go to McDonald's. For $3, I can get a hamburger. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like there's all these layers that we build that we think are solid. So we create these like false it's like, you know, David Byrne burning down. I'm an ordinary guy burning down the house. You know, like when I hear a lyric like that, like, and I think of what is the house? The house is like the false reality that we think like serves us, you know? So yeah, McDonald's serves me because I have this type of job and da 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 da. And you can live in that reality and that can be your paradigm and it can make sense. But the minute you start peeling it back, it's like, okay, well, I get that you think that, but you realize that eating this type of food in the long term, you're going to have more medical bills, you're going to have more health issues, you're going to have less energy, less clarity. Whereas if you had that clarity, you could maybe get a different job, or you could work less, or you could work smarter, or you could have more time to cook. And slowly, like as those layers get peeled back, you realize that you were built your whole life on a crappy foundation.
Yeah, and when you start relying and leaning on the things that are around you, then you become part of the society. You become part of the pressures that yourself and everyone else feel, the shoulds, right? You know, like why would I only eat plants when I could, you know, go here and get a cheap, easy meal, you know, and cut corners? Why would I cook when I could easily just order carry out, right? And then we start to have these social constructs that start to box everybody in, and then we wonder why we're not quite happy, and it's because we're starting to live inside of this paradigm that we've all kind of contributed to, you know, and yet I'd like to think that most people know what it's like to be truly authentic, or at least can think back to a really pleasant memory when they did feel truly themselves, you know. But for a lot of people, it can be very sad that it's like that's like a distant memory that seems impossible, right?
You're like you were a kid, and that's all you remember, like being a kid and being free. But now you have a job, and you're part of society, and all this stuff.
So it's like, well, I could, but you know, I've got this mortgage, I've got this marriage, I've got 3 kids, and you know, and these are all those aren't the problems. The problems is the attachments that you assume are necessities, right? And there's just no real way to get out of that without really conscious choice and the discipline to continue to make that choice. You know, it's so hard to make systemic change.
I think there is interesting, like the word discipline, I have an interesting relationship with, because I think, like, for me, it feels like whatever's happening to me, like, is set in motion. It's not really choice. It takes a lot of work. Like I say, life is getting easy, like it's getting more simple, but it's not easy, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So it's simple is not easy by any means, and maybe difficult in a weird way is easy, if that makes sense. But it's not a conscious choice. Like the barefoot stuff, it felt like it was, the more I tuned into nature, the more I moved to Colorado and like wanted to be outside more. One day I'm on the trail and I'm like, why am I wearing shoes? Like something inside of me was like, take your shoe, like in my head, take your shoes off. And I did it. And I was like, oh, I did for a little bit. And then slowly over time, it's like, I just couldn't wear shoes anymore, you know? And then it became run. And so like, the more I'm tuning into, like, you may call it higher self or intention or universe, the more like it's almost making these choices for me. And they're not easy, like to go, you know, like it's trial by fire. Walking barefoot is painful. Running barefoot is painful, but I know I need to do it. And I know that in order for me to like go from this conditioned being that was in comfort to like going back to discomfort and ultimately being in much more of a natural connected way, that path is not a simple one. It's like very painful path, but it's worth it. So every time I'm walking and I'm feeling every sensation on my foot and I'm getting cut, I'm like, ow, ow, ow. But yes, like more and more and more. And not because I like pain, but because I know what it's leading to. Yeah. And so I think a lot of the fear for people is like, it's going to be hard or it's going to be painful. And it is. Even like speaking your truth. And I meet a lot of people who are like, we'll have a good conversation. Or like, I wish I could have a conversation with my friends like this. I feel like none of my friends get this kind of stuff. I feel really alone and isolated. And I'm like, that's probably going to be the case, and you might have one person in your life that you feel like you can talk to, and it's going to be painful to have to like distance yourself from these people. But it's the same thing as like, it's going to be painful to stop eating McDonald's or stop drinking or whatever the thing is that is like struggling with, but is it worth it? And if it's worth it, well then no, yeah, it's going to be hard, but anyone that's on the path is going to experience that. You're not alone.
We're not put on this planet to be just laying in a cushion our whole time, that's where there's a lot of fortune that we live in a time where a lot of people have that choice, but it's also, it can be devastating, and it goes back to what you were saying about, wealthy people being unhappy, or people who just couldn't find their happiness, through accomplishments or through things. And, it seems to be the theme of our conversation so far, walking barefoot is a challenge, but it can be very rewarding, just like having my feet on the ground right now. And yeah, they're a bit raw, like it's going to be nice to, get a hot shower in and scrub them, and get them feeling good again. But it's worth it, and like these are much more memorable experiences. And it's the same with an exercise routine, it's literally hurting and kind of breaking down the body so that it builds back stronger. And, it's like that with your mind. It's like that with healing from a disease. Cause you can have all the best medicine in the world. And I can tell you firsthand, what really got me through that was pushing myself mentally and spiritually, sticking with meditation when it was so hard to stay present, staying grateful when I didn't have much to be grateful for in my current reality, going through some hypnosis work and envisioning my best, healthiest, most vibrant self as in real time, and embracing, and like my person that I've worked with, encouraging me to see my 1.0 self and have a very crystal clear version of my 2.0 self, right? The happiest, healthiest, most successful version of myself in real time, and us hugging in genuine embrace and feeling every sensation of that, and feeling like almost like the merging of those two souls, and that bringing you to a new level. A lot of it feels, kind of foreign and impossible at first, but that's human nature. Everything is impossible until it gets proven otherwise. And now we're in this crazy, amazing period of time with technology and medicine, when we're actually starting to be able to give metric evidence of these energies, these high vibrations, and the placebo and nocebo effects, and how positive mindset and intention can genuinely heal. And I think we both have experienced that in our own different ways, through music, through plant medicines, through great conversations, experiences in nature, right? But there's something about that even people on the lowest, let me rephrase, even people who aren't as tuned in that respect, you still understand what it's like to get a good vibe from somebody, or a bad vibe. And what it's like when you're in a bad space versus a high space. There is waveforms that we are creating with those types of feelings that we're sharing right now as me and you talk on this mountain, that you share when you flick someone off or tell them to fuck off when you have road rage, when you're yelling at your friend in an argument or something. These are all measurable experiences. And to me, that feels like it's a universal language. It's a language that we share with all things on this planet. And I personally feel it's what we share with all things in the universe. And when you start kind of opening your mind to that possibility, it's really empowering, and you start kind of feeling like, yes, we are just these small little specks on a planet that is just a small little speck in this grand scheme of things, but we have the ability to be phenomenal emitters of this energy.
Yeah. And I think the spec is also like the idea of self. Like there's this interesting thing. It's like we are so much greater than what we are defined by, or what we try to define ourselves by. Like, because we are connected to everything. Like, we're this tiny little piece of this great gigantic thing, but we're all swirling in it together. So like there's a sense of oneness, that the sort of ego identity is like this separate little piece of us that we think we are, but we are all like in this thing. So in that way, like energy being entangled, like I saw something today, someone posted about like sex, and like you can have sex with someone, and like if they're taking on rage and shame and guilt and all these things, like you're going to take that in. And it's just like downloading someone else's information on your computer, you know, like that we have these energetic fields that we're connected to and that we're a part of. And if we're not aware of the energy that we're putting out, but also the people around us, like we're just kind of being taken over by energy. One thing I've talked a lot about with my new partner, it's like your poison is your medicine. Like it's the way to transmute. Like for example, she's an amazing breathwork teacher, and she does breathwork for people and retreats, and the reason she got into breathwork though is because her whole life she suffered from migraines, really bad debilitating migraines and headaches and stuff. But she was able to use that and transmute that to actually set her on the path to discovering who she was. So if you have an ailment, if you have something, and you just see it as bad, well, you're creating this energy like it's bad, I'm blah, blah, blah. But if you start to realize like this is actually a thing that's guiding you towards this higher being, it can totally shift like the way. It was the same for me with, I used to have really bad stomach aches and suffered ADHD, and it wasn't other than through looking at those things that allowed me to actually see who I could be, which sets you on this whole path. So it makes it exciting for me. Anything that's off, like especially with being barefoot now, like I have so much awareness. If there's anything that's off a little bit, I'm like, why is this off? And like, what is it telling me? Like when your knee's throbbing instead of, oh, my knee hurts, like this is a living thing. How can I connect to it? How can I communicate with, hey knee, like what do you set you on this whole path? So it makes it exciting for me. Anything that's off, like especially with being barefoot now, like I have so much awareness. If there's anything that's off a little bit, I'm like, why is this off? And like, what is it telling me? Like when your knee's throbbing instead of, oh, my knee hurts, like this is a living thing. How can I connect to it? How can I communicate with, hey knee, like what do you need? One of my mentor clients, she had all these knee problems, and she was really struggling with her knee, and just seeing, all she saw was, I used to be a runner, I used to be a great runner, then I got a knee problem, then I couldn't run. This sucks, my knee sucks, whatever. But I got her to do this exercise where she wrote a letter to her knee, just as like kind of a practice of like appreciation, because it's like, wow, like look at your life now. Maybe your knee injury like took you on this whole new path. How can you actually give thanks to this knee? Because when we're so disconnected from everything else and we think that like life is just here to serve us, we end up like missing out on this level of appreciation. I've even done the same thing with like my car. When my car used to have a lot of car problems, and I'm like, I'm just treating this thing like it's just like a piece of inanimate object that just is at my will to do as I please and drive me around. It's like, but there's, even if, regardless of what you believe, like when I got into the car and I started shifting my mindset and I was appreciative of my car, it started working better because I'm creating a better relationship to it.
And these types of things, they sound so woo-woo, but they're just, the more you start to buy into it, the more that they just deliver in spades. They just keep coming back to you. What you're saying about the car, it's so easy to be like, damn this flat tire, but you don't think about the thousands upon thousands of miles and all the countless adventures that tire has kept you safe and gotten you there. It's like that one on so many different levels in life. And man, it's just a very, very powerful practice to continue to see opportunities in times when you could very easily see disappointment. Yeah,
it's funny the word woo woo, because like Joe Rogan's always like trying to decipher between what is and what isn't. But to me, like it's kind of a silly word, because it is like, what is what in this reality is any more weird than anything else?
Yeah.
You know, just because like science is studying it or some smart people like talk about it, so then we like say, okay, well, it's not woo woo or whatever, but like everything is magic.
Everything's woo.
Yeah, everything is woo. Everything is magic because everything is energy. Anything is possible. So I don't see like, you know, I used to think of spirituality as a very specific thing, you know, and then there's like the weird realms of spirituality that go deeper and people with, you know, psychics and all this stuff. But I don't see that as any more weird than like, yeah, having an iPhone that can like transmute. Like, I don't understand how that iPhone works and how it just like, how does someone create something out of nothing that can have these screens and these colors and, whoa, got a tree falling down.
I think we just heard a tree fall down on the
yeah,
down on the
some
hillside.
woo-woo right there. But it really, it's like I don't see any separation. Like when we're existing in this sort of energetic quantum reality, like anything is possible. So nothing is more weird or out of the ordinary than anything else to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just life. Like what is manifestation is magic. You know, it's amazing. So so is breathing and eating. It's like
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes our modern vocabulary, you know, when you start to take a step back and pull it apart, you do realize that some of it is just set out of habit, but not very intentional.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I'm drawn back to, I mean, our friendship has evolved in a lot of ways, but it started through music. And with the music, there is this very woo-woo experience that happens with with the music. You know, we both come from, you know, being big into jamming and improvisation, and the experiences that we've both felt when we get out of our way and let all of the practice and the intention and the creativity and the inspiration from other musicians and other things we've heard, and we just start playing our soul, and then you start to vibrate with the other people who are playing, and you hit these musical moments that have never existed before and will never exist again in that space. It's like such magic, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to think about that and to assume that that's passable, but other types of concepts that are inconceivable are impossible, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely where I got into the realm of probably magic and spirituality first, was through music and through like jamming and fish and like those spaces where you're just like at one with everything, and it's a mystical experience, which I didn't experience that like in like religion. But yeah, it's definitely shifted my whole perspective, like that, knowing what was possible through music to create this connection. It's like going from, you could be at a concert with 60,000 people, and there's this connection that we all have. We don't have to know each other. We don't have to agree. But there is like this undercurrent of like, wow, we're all in this together. We're all one here. That's why I think music is such a powerful medicine, because it goes beyond thoughts, ideas, beliefs. Thoughts, ideas, beliefs are the things that keep people separate. They're the things that keep people fighting, you know, and killing one another and like splitting and dividing. And you see all this like news and media and all the things that are like false news and all this stuff. And it's like, when we all just go to the most simplest things of like connection and vibration, suddenly we're not trying to take, and we're not living in fear of like other people taking from us, but we're like, oh, I'm just a piece of this. I don't need to like fight other people. I just need to actually go deeper into myself. And that's something that's been shifting for me. If you want to go out in the streets and protest and post things on social media, and that's your prerogative. I'm down with whatever feels right to you. And what I've been seeing is the more I tune into myself, like within connection to nature, like that to me is what's really going to save the world. And I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm trying to save the world, but I see a lot of people like trying to fight or trying to create new technologies. Like, oh, the environment's being polluted. We need to create this new technology that's going to like save us all, because then it's going to clean up the ocean. But you're just creating like another thing that also takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of resources, and may work and may not. And I don't mean to say that that's bad or good. It's not really about that. But I've just come to recognize, like, if everybody would just start, like, kind of getting to know who they really are and their impact on the planet, like, it does start, you know, they say think globally, act locally, but I think it's like think globally, like, but act like within your own ability first, and look at like what is the impact that you're having. Because I know a lot of people that are like activists and that are trying to do good in the world, but they're not really looking at themselves and the impact that they're having. And they're pointing fingers at other people saying like, you shouldn't do this. This is bad. I can't believe you would eat this food. It's like, blah, blah. But then they're not looking at like, well, maybe they have all these other habits that they're not fully aware of. And it's easier to point a finger at somebody else than it is to point the finger back at yourself. So think about your impact. And I guarantee if everyone were to start actually like connecting to nature and looking at like just the beauty of it and what's really out, like the abundance of nature, the magic of it, the impermanence of it all, and really connect to that, well, then all of a sudden, all those problems, it might take a long time, but long term, all the problems of like waste, the amount of stuff that we're wasting, they start to go away because you're like, oh my God, I've had this bad impact. I've just been buying things and consuming. I'm going through the process myself. I'm starting to get rid of that what doesn't serve me and stop buying things that are wasteful. I'm in no way saying that I've got it figured out or I'm perfect, but I'm seeing this unraveling process of like, do I really need that? I still go on Amazon now and I put things in my cart but now I'm like, wait, this is just out of habit. Do I really need to buy this thing?
Right.
No, I don't. Where is it already in abundance, like elsewhere?
Yeah. It's a matter of introspection, right?
Yeah.
And you nailed it with, it's easy to point the finger. There's a lot of people who are pointing the finger right now, and it seems to only be getting worse. But, having that attitude of it is someone else's fault and we need to continue to point stronger fingers is making the problem worse.
Yeah.
And I would add to what you said earlier. It is totally about cultivating your best self. How can I be the best version of Yoshua, or how can I be the best Seth today? And then one step beyond that is how can I positively impact the people in my immediate circles, whether it's my social media group or just a close friend, sharing or being generous with a stranger in your community. I mean, these things, they have ripples. You think about if every single person out there was friendly or generous to one or two people every single day, think about how that would lift up every single community, lift up every single city, every state, every country, every continent, and that's how we get real change, is through positivity and connectivity, understanding that we are in this together, whether we want to divide and to play partisanship. It's like the fate of our entire existence is all together, and I think we can see that very clearly right now with this pandemic, right? Yeah. We can argue about masks versus no masks, and do we keep the economy rolling or do we keep our children safe? And there's so many things to argue about, but where can we resonate? Where can we lift each other up?
Yeah.
That just seems to be the road less traveled these days, right?
Yeah, and I also I fully get and empathize with people that have anger and that have been victims of hate and want to express that and want to fight in the ways that make sense for them. That's why I don't say hey, this is the way to do it, or this is I don't have the way for everybody. I just know myself and I know what makes sense for me. And at some point, even if you are fighting, and you're the victim of racism, at some point the fight's going to be over, right? Or you're gonna have to stop for a moment and think, and it still has to go back to how can you find that center within yourself? How can you positively influence the people around you? And recognize that we are co-creating our world, and if we're just putting out hate because somebody hates us, it's only going to keep perpetuating it. So do what you need to do to make sense of your life. I just think that if we could get people more on this wave of connecting to what really is here and what really matters, then maybe fear won't continue to guide everyone's life. But it's oh, wow. Look at that. That's a beautiful mountain. I'm just this little speck here, and I get to be part of it, and I get to look at it. And cool, what do I really need? So a lot of my, change is just, recognizing the impact that I've had on the world and how can I have less of an impact. And even with food, eating a lot less now and training myself to not need to consume as much. It's well, food is one of the biggest problems in the world. So the less I'm consuming, the less impact I have on that. If I can share that with somebody through a YouTube video or a conversation, that feels like my place. And we all have gifts. It's another thing. Everybody has a gift to share. You have multiple gifts, one gift, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't know it yet, if you're out there listening, like, what can I do, or whatever, like, we all have different gifts to share. And I don't just mean, like, oh, music, and that might be your gift, but that might just be a passion or a hobby. But you might have something, and a gift could be, like, just being a friend that is open and honest, that someone feels comfortable talking to. And rather than, like, try to dim our gifts, which is something I spent most of my life doing, thinking I had these gifts, but I had to kind of hide them. I didn't want to overstep, or I need to be modest. It's like, I have a gift coming through me. I don't own it. The reason that I have it is so that I can share it. So the more I cultivate the gifts that I have, rather than coming from this place of this is mine, this is just something that's coming through me, that's being channeled. So how can I share that most authentically and owning the gift? It took me a really long time to be like, wow, I have these amazing gifts. And the more I cultivate the awesomeness that is within me, the more the gift actually gets to resonate with somebody else, you know? So it's
a good way to
shift.
put it, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
As I've struggled with that too, as, wanting to be part of me feels like, oh, what if I'm not good enough? What if my voice cracks when I sing this song, or I miss a chord, or I totally flub up? There's that sort of nervousness to it. And then there's the other side of it. Well, I don't want to be a showboat. I don't want to be the one who's drawing all the attention. It's important to show modesty and humility. But yeah, I think that might be one of my biggest takeaways from our conversation today is, it's a gift, having the talent and having the music within you, or any sort of gift that you may have, it's flowing through you, and it's meant to be shared. It's
gifts, right? We don't keep them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not about hoarding. It's
Yeah.
not about collecting and securing your own. It's about sharing. It's about being one with the nature and being one with everyone else around you.
Yeah. I really see, when I look at my life, everything I've been through, why I'm still here. Like, I feel like I've accomplished enough. I've done enough things. Like, I'm not like trying to achieve anything anymore. Like, I have no like goals in terms of like financial goals, or I want to build this big business. Like, I'm just done. I could just live out here and be fine. But when I really think about why I'm still alive and why I exist, it's just to share. That's like it. I can't think of any other reason other than like, hey, there's people out there that feel alone or feel lost or that don't fit in or whatever. And if I can just remind somebody like, hey, it's okay. Like, I've been there. You're amazing. You have something to share. You have these incredible gifts, and just like be that. Don't worry about trying to fit in or create some character that you think people are gonna like. Just like be who you authentically are. And when you're aligned with yourself, everything else in life just has a way of taking care of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel kind of slightly different on that respect. I still do have entrepreneurial and financial goals in mind, but they've shifted a lot from my 20s, when it just seemed like that was like peak startup enthusiasm, right? Everybody wanted to become an influencer and to have their own business that they were building, and as like status, right? I still want to become successful, but one thing that my mentor shared with me recently that I just really, really have taken in is, money is a magnifier. That's all it is. It's an energetic magnifier. People have done great evils with money. People have done amazing things with money. All it does is amplify your intentions. And I feel that my business path is not finished yet, and I have this desire, and it's not clear. I don't have this straight business model that I can just lay on you right now of how we're going to get to, conquer this market and, and become a multi-million-dollar business or something like that. But what I do have a dream of is being able to generate enough wealth for myself that I can freely share that and make more substantial change in my community, as well as support the people who work with me. And the idea of not only being able to support myself and my partner or my children, but also to be able to support the people who work with me and their partners and their children, and facilitating an environment and a community that understands that generating wealth isn't a bad thing. It's your intentions surrounding that, and I think that both of what we're saying is critically important right now.
I think it's also kind of the same thing, because when I express it, it's like, whether you want to have a business or not, it's more about what is the driving intention. Is it to have, like you said, be an influencer, to be famous, to just, like, there's a very different energetic approach when you're doing it because your ego, like, thinks it's going to give you something that you don't already have, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing it because you just recognize, like, this is something I can do to impact people, that's beautiful. It's the same, like, for me, it's the same thing. I'm just recognizing I have something to share, and that's it. But I don't think that that's going to be the thing that's going to, like, fulfill me or make me feel better than other people or something, which in the past was an early drive. Like, I can create this huge YouTube channel, and, like, people are going to think I'm super cool, and girls are going to, it's like being a rock star, flock to me and all this stuff. And it's a very different energy of approaching the world, So if you're going after life in that way, it's just, it's ultimately going to find at least I've found it finds a way to self-destruct at some point. It will show you that it's not the answer. It's like Jim Carrey says, I wish everyone can get rich and famous so they could see it's not the answer, It's like
that dude's amazing. Yeah. I don't, there's few celebrities that have had his level of success that have taken the path that he has, and I just applaud him. Even his borderline, I mean, the man is woo-woo, right? But I love him to death. Same. I can't wait to see what comes up next with Jim Carrey.
Have you read his book?
No. What's the book?
That's what's come up next.
Oh, is he writing it?
It's out.
Oh, okay.
I already read it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's
nice.
a trip.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
So, Yoshua, we've been going for almost an hour right now,
right.
and of course, it just like flies by, and we've got some more barefoot hiking to do. But is there anything else you'd like to bring to the table? I definitely want to give you a chance to put it out there of how people can connect with you who resonate with what you're saying, just like I do.
Yeah, I mean, You Enjoy Life is the thing, YouTube, Instagram. And I'm just sharing stuff like this. It's really no different. I recognize that I have an opportunity to share some of the weirder things and the things that are exciting to me that maybe aren't being as shared on YouTube in those spaces. And if it inspires somebody, that's cool. It's the same thing with, like, you were saying earlier, like, when we first went barefoot hiking, people were, like, looking at me or like, oh my God, you're barefoot. And now, like, you're going out and getting that thing. It's like
the same reaction.
I like sort of being that outlier, not as just to be weird, but to spark something. I think what I've gotten through this whole journey of everything that I've gone through is, like, I'm just here to be an activator, to remind somebody that, like, oh, you can think differently, or, like, maybe the things that you thought were true aren't, and, like, what else is possible, and, like, here's how to activate your gifts and to be challenged in that. So that's really all I'm doing. Yeah.
Wonderful, man.
Yeah.
You enjoy life. And for me, I'm just so excited to finally be back recording this podcast. It's always felt very organic, there's been a lot of learning experiences, with the technical side of things and refining my interviewing process. But these are the ones that really feel the best. Just open communication, conversations with close friends. And for me, my goals in the future is obviously continue to build my health and come back to where I was before, and embodying that 2.0 version of myself, as well as bringing back the Mindmill in a different and more intentional way. I've been doing a lot more music, and I've always kind of kept the music a little bit separate from the Mindmill, but now that I've built this company up and I have a little bit more of a platform, I see doing more sharing of musical endeavors and more artistic expressions through the platform, and as well as more podcasting, because that's awesome. That's always the best, So Who knows where we're going to be at, but I'm so excited to be back and alive. Grateful for
you
another.
Look healthy, I want to say.
I appreciate
Strong
it.
and healthy. Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Just grateful for every day. Another beautiful, healthy day on this planet. until further notice. We're still alive on this planet, So be grateful, my friends. I love you. And thank you so much, Yoshua.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Mindmill Podcast. I'm so excited to be back on the mic and preparing new episodes for y'all. Be sure to go back and listen to my first episode with Yoshua, aka Yoshua Greenfield, which is available at themindmill.com as well as all major podcast platforms. I'd love your support and recommendations as I reboot the Mindmill Podcast. New topics and guests are always welcomed. We need to lift each other up, now more than ever. I'm sending you all so much love out there. Stay safe, smile through the masks, and be the change you want to see in the world. Thanks for listening.